Greetings, Rubellite here, and today we are going to be going over the next series that I'm going to be doing, which is deck archetype overviews. And the first one is Earth Rite. Earth Rite is going to be a two-part series, where in the first part we will be just simply going over the archetype, how it works, which cards are good and which cards are bad. And in part 2, we will be going over deck building, and I will show a replay of Earth Rite actually performing well against some of the meta decks. So, what exactly is Earth Rite? Well, in order for us to actually answer this question, I have created a specific deck. Not really a deck, but it's just every single card that I've seen used in Earth Rite, cards that aren't Earth Rite, and those that actually are. So, let's answer the question, what exactly is Earth Rite? Earth Rite is a runecraft archetype that uses Earth Sigils, also known as Earth Essences, to trigger effects that will help you win the game. Sigils are amulets that, when they are played, they will grant a fanfare ability, and then that amulet will stay on the board until it is used. So it takes up a board slot. And there are cards such as Runic Guardian here that have Earth Rite. Earth Rite cards use an Earth Sigil to automatically destroy an Earth Sigil to grant an Earth Rite effect. So, as an example, Runic Guardian will destroy an Earth Sigil on the board to gain +1/+1 and ward. So that is the general idea of how Earth Rite and Earth Sigils work together. You play Sigils on the board in the early game to gain advantages in the mid and late game. There are multiple ways of you to actually use Sigils. You can gain Sigils from Crafty Warlock. The Sigil is free. However, this card is prone to banish. There is Dwarf Alchemist, which gives an Earth Essence into your hand, and an Earth Essence is a 1 play point amulet that is an Earth Sigil. Let's go over now which cards are good and which cards are bad, and how you could combo certain cards together. So, one of the most common Earth Rite combos that I've seen in the early game is comboing Iron Scrap Smelter, which is a very strong 1 play point Earth Sigil. It gives you a 0/2 ward, which can just delay the game. That delays the face damage from the 1 play point storm minions. And they play Apprentice Alchemist to gain a 2 play point spell to summon a Guardian Golem, which is a 3/3 ward token. It's viable. I personally don't like it, but that's just my opinion. This is one of the good combos you could do. One of my favorites is probably turn 3 to turn 4, which is using any Sigil you can with Remy and Remy Witchy Duo. So Remy and Remy is a very powerful evolve target. It gains +2/+2. So even without the Earth Rite, she is a fairly good evolve target. But with an Earth Sigil on the board, she will trigger Earth Rite, summon a Guardian Golem, which, like we said, is a 3/3 ward token for free. This allows you to trade into a card, and if it was their only card on the board, suddenly they can't kill Remy on the turn that she was played, basically, unless they have removal cards instead of using evolves to trade. Against Havencraft, though, you will lose both cards, because 3/3 Ward is it's a target for Cudgel. Still, Remy is a very powerful card, and it is the best 4-drop available for Earth Rite. Ancient Alchemist is another very strong card for Earth Rite. Put 3 Conjure Guardians into your hand. Now, 3 Conjure Guardians is a lot of wards. It's 3/3 wards. Now, the main problem that I've seen that I have actually run into, and other Earth Rite players that I've played against have run into, is that they play Ancient Alchemist when they have 7 or more cards in their hand. And they will mill either one of the Guardian Golems or mill the card they draw next. Now, if you can actually play one of the Guardian Golems or play something to empty your hand, it's not a big deal. But if you have 7 cards in your hand and you play this card, you can't actually play anything, you're gonna mill. So that's just something to keep in mind when playing this card. It's very powerful, but you could mill a card if you don't play it properly. My favorite card of Earth Rite, Sun Oracle Pascal. Now, Sun Oracle Pascal is one of those cards that is controversial. The majority of people believe that she is a trash card, and they will liquefy her the moment that they acquire her. But that's really only because they don't play Earth Rite. In Earth Rite, Sun Oracle Pascal does have her place. What is her effect? Her effect is, at the end of this turn, double all allied followers' attack and defense other than this card, if this follower is still in play. So, Sun Oracle Pascal, on turn 5, most of the time it will not be viable. Unless you have, let's say, Remy and Ramy on the board that somehow survived, and you have an Earth Rite on the board, or an Earth Essence, you could Sun Oracle Pascal, evolve her, and trade. And suddenly now you have a 5x on the board that is now going to be doubled to a 10x on the board. Against certain decks, like Shadowcraft, most of the Shadowcraft decks aren't running Deathbrand anymore, so a 10x card is really hard to deal with, provided that it has enough health to survive an evolve trade. But the most common combo that I've done with Pascal that I've also seen is comboing her with 6/6 wards to help against Forest Roach and Daria Runecraft. Because both Daria Runecraft and Forest Roach have a lot of trouble getting through big wards. They don't run the massive removal tools required to get rid of big or a lot of big minions like Fire Chain or Winter's Caprice, which I've only encountered once. So if you are going to build an Earth Rite deck that revolves around tokens, you could run Pascal. It's mostly a preference choice, but she's not a bad card, as people might say she is. She's misunderstood and often misplayed. The newest card for Earth Rite, which is probably the second strongest card in my opinion for Earth Rite, is Professor of the Taboos. Whenever an enemy follower is destroyed during your turn, summon a zombie. At the end of your turn, perform Earth Rite and destroy a random enemy follower. So if you have an evolve point and a sigil, this basically is double removal, and you generate 2 zombie tokens, which are 2/2 for 2 minions. It's a very powerful card against certain archetypes. The problem is that it's random for the end of the turn. So if there's a lot of cards on the board and you don't have your answer of Calamitous Curse, which we will go over next, this card could screw you over, but it also could be a lifesaver. The main thing of this card is that if there's too few minions on the board for Curse to be viable as a removal tool, this is your answer, as it will clear the board and give you tokens, which you could then combo with Pascal or put them behind wards on turn 7. Calamitous Curse. I believe this is the single best card for Earth Rite, at least at the moment. And that is because of the current meta of the game. So, Calamitous Curse. Banish all enemy followers with 2 defense or less. Earth Rite. Banish all enemy followers with 5 defense or less instead. So this is a flexible card. Against aggro blood, you don't want it to use an Earth Rite, for the most part, as most of the cards in aggro blood have less than 2 health, minus Urias and Implancer. Against Daria Rune, this card is a lifesaver. If Daria Rune doesn't flood the board before turn 6, this card will completely clear the board. The only downside to this card is that, just like Themisi's Decree, you basically skip your turn in order to reset the board, and then it just goes right back to your opponent. That said, though, it is a board wipe, and that must be taken into consideration. It is a very powerful tool that, when used properly, will save your life, and possibly end up winning you the game. Juno's Secret Laboratory. This card is an amulet for 7 mana, countdown 3, Earth Rite, summon a Guardian Golem, and at the end of your turn, summon a Guardian Golem. So if you have an Earth Sigil on the board, this will give you 4 3/3 tokens, unless it's removed. Without a Sigil, it will give you 3 3/3 tokens. This is the card that I usually end up comboing with Sun Oracle Pascal, as you can obtain at the most around 3 6/6 tokens with Pascal on the board. The usual number of 6/6 tokens that I end up with, though, is 2, which is still good enough against Forest Roach if the game still is going on for that long. And against Daria Rune, they don't have the removal tools necessary to get rid of all of your wards, and they will end up trading their minions into you in order to keep your board clear. At that point, there's very little that Daria Rune or Forest can do, and you can simply go face with doing minor trades just to keep them from clearing your board. And having 6 health also plays around Will of the Forest from Forestcraft, since they can only have a maximum of 8 damage from Will of the Forest. They would only be able to kill 1 target. Against Bloodcraft, though, it's a little different, where Revelation just completely resets the board, and Pascal isn't as useful. That's where you probably wouldn't play Pascal. Instead, you would just use the tokens to try and make them waste cards. And that's really all of the good Earthright cards in the deck that you could use. Let's go over some of the other cards that I've seen and that I run myself, and which deck archetypes you could run. So there are 3 major Earthright decks in the game that I have seen. There is the Grind Heavy Concede Earthright Rune, which runs no win conditions at all, and they just grind you into submission or until you concede. That deck does not run Sun Oracle Pascal, it does not run Dark Angel Olivia, Daria, or Prince of Darkness. It just simply runs triple Juno Secret Laboratory, triple Taboos, and triple Calamitous Curse, with triple Ancient Alchemist. It simply wears you down until you concede. The second archetype, which I've seen a little bit but not very often, is Path to Purgatory, Earth Rite Rune. So Earth Rite Runecraft actually has the option of going with Path to Purgatory. Since they get a lot of tokens and free cards, they can generate shadows fairly simply. Not overly quickly though, unless you run Altered Fate. That said though, Earth Rite Runecraft and Forestcraft are probably the only two archetypes that can get to 30 shadows relatively easily without risk dying. Shadowcraft can too, but Shadowcraft risks dying doing so for the most part. That is outside the point. In Path of Purgatory Runecraft, you run a lot of cards that will generate you free sigils, such as Crafty Warlock, Dwarf Alchemist, Kaleidoscopic Glow to return Dwarf Alchemist if he survives to your hand, so you can get another free sigil. Time-Worn Mage Levy is also used to get a free card, because free cards equal sigils, or free cards equal shadows. Ancient Alchemist is the key card, because it will give you 3 extra cards, which 3 extra shadows. You are already 10% of the way there with just this card alone. Even assuming this card doesn't die, or it gets banished, you have 3 cards in your hand that you can throw away to generate the shadows. Professor of the Taboos will give you tokens, which also count towards the shadow count. Juno Secret Laboratory, more tokens. And finally, the last one is probably my overall favorite, which is Pascal Runecraft. Pascal Earth Rite Rune is more of a combo grind deck. So the way it works is you grind out the game as much as you can until you can play Pascal as your win condition or win more condition. It plays very similarly to just the grind Earth Rite, but instead you use Sun Oracle Pascal as your finisher, or to trigger very unoptimal trades to grind your enemy down. The cards that I would run in Pascal Rune, which we can simply just go and look at my Praise the Sun Oracle deck. So this is my Praise the Sun Oracle version 3. I haven't changed the name, but basically it's the same standard grind Earth Rite, triple Alchemist, double Taboos, and Juno Secret Laboratory, with Sun Oracle Pascal in there. Now this is tacked in against Bloodcraft and Daria Rune with triple Curse and double Veteran Alchemist, but the idea is still the same. You use up your tokens until you have a board that's favorable and unclearable. You play Sun Oracle Pascal, and the board is a lot stronger and harder to deal with. And most of the time you will have lethal threatening the board, and they have to deal with it. Let's go other options you could have for win conditions in Earth Rite, besides Path to Purgatory or Pascal. So, Dark Angel Olivia, as you saw in my Earth Rite deck, I run one. This card is very powerful, gives you more evolve points, and you can get more uses out of Remy and Rami, possibly, or just more trades to gain an advantage. Prince of Darkness is an alternate win condition I run because Pascal is not reliable enough. This will give you an Apocalypse deck, which is the 10 cards and that is basically your win condition. You just grind out your opponent until you draw it, and then win from there. Now let's look at cards that work well with Earth Rite, and cards that are fairly mandatory. While not particularly the best cards to use, they are mandatory. Time-Worn Mage Levy. This card is fairly bonkers, just by the value, even without Piercing Rune. It is a perfect 2-drop evolve target that gains 2/2, plus a 1 play point 3 damage spell. So it's basically Runecraft's version of Cudgel, except it's not Banish, it's Destruction. So you would destroy a 3 health or lower minion, and you trade Levy into something else. Kaleidoscopic Glow. This card is flexible, but limited. So you can use this card to cycle your sigils back, or to throw 2 play point or less followers back to your opponent's hand. Card is very good, but it's limited in the fact that you can only cycle 2 play points or less. Price of Magic. This card is controversial. I like it for the odd Shadowcraft game, but it's a 3 play point amulet. It is an Earth Sigil to banish an enemy follower with 2 defense or less. The 2 defense or less is the limiting part. This cannot counter Urias, sadly, but it does counter Shadowcraft's 1/1 minions that have last words, summon a Lich, Hell's Unleasher, and Attendant. It also counters Lurching Corpse, so it's really just a card teched in against Shadowcraft, but it is a sigil. So if you need a sigil now, and you can afford the 3 mana, and this is your only card in hand, there you go. Alternatively, if you don't need the banish, you could just run more crafty warlocks for sigils. Or you can run Elemental Alchemy to get a clay golem. I've run this card a few times. I particularly don't like it, because 3 mana to get a 2/2 token is not much value. Sure, you get a token out of it that can be traded into, and this is a sigil. I would just rather have the flexibility of Kaleidoscopic Glowing, Scrap Iron Smelter, and playing that again for a ward. Sure, it's a 0/2 ward, but you get a draw out of it. Timeless Witch. Timeless Witch can be useful if all you're facing is aggro Bloodcraft. So, Timeless Witch, fanfare. Your leader cannot be damaged until this follower leaves the area. Basically, they can't deal damage to your face. They have to trade, which is not what aggro Blood wants to do. And the fact that she has 4 health means that she can't be traded into with Razor Claw as a 1-hit. They would have to Razor Claw the card and then trade a follower into it, or evolve a card that has 2 attack into her. She's a fairly strong tech card, and she does get +2/+2, making her a pretty difficult card for aggro Blood to deal with without spending too many cards to kill it. Outside of Dance of Death, of course. Fissure Bomb. I particularly don't like this card. Fissure Bomb deals 5 damage to an enemy follower. Earth Rite, put a Conjure Guardian into your hand. It is a 5 damage nuke for 4 mana. And if you have a sigil, it puts a Guardian Golem into your hand. The problem with this is that it comes the turn before Ancient Alchemist. And if you only have one sigil, which on turn 4 can be fairly common, you really don't want to play this card. You would want something else. And later in the game, a 5 damage nuke might be viable. The only reason you would run this is if you want another golem. Piercing Rune. This is a 4 mana 2 pierce 2 damage. So you deal 2 damage to an enemy follower, and then it pierces to deal 2 damage to the enemy leader. And when an allied follower evolves, change the cost of this card to 1 if it's in your hand. It's a very strong card, and combos well with Levy for 7 plus 2, 9 total damage on turn 4. 4 damage to any minion, and 5 damage to face. Or rather, 6 damage to any minion, and 5 damage to face. So 11 total damage from 3 cards for 4 mana. It's really strong. You can use this if you want. Grand Gargoyle. I don't run this card for the pure reason that it's a 5-drop 4/5, and the only 5-drop that honestly I would run is Ancient Alchemist and Pascal. It does get 2/2. The problem is that it's a vanilla minion with last words summon an Earth Essence, which is not what you would really want on turn 5. Unless you absolutely are starving for sigils. Fate's Hand. Draw 2 cards, subtract 0 from the cost of this card. Spell boost, subtract 1 more. I run 2 copies of this card. It is draw power, and Earth Rite Rune's main problem is draw power. They don't have a card specific to them for draw. Rather, they have a spell boost card they could draw with. But luckily for Earth Rite Rune, they have a lot of spells with Conjure Guardians that you could use to subtract the cost of this card and eventually get a free draw, or you'll just have a cheap draw 2 cards card. Card draw is required in Earth Rite Rune, because if you don't have the cards you need at the time, you're not gonna have a good time. Golem Protection. This is a spell to summon a Guardian Golem. 5 mana for a 3/3 ward is garbage. However, Earth Rites give +2/+2 to all allied Guardian Golems. If you have an Earth Sigil and more than 1 Guardian Golem on board at the time, sure, this can be useful, but it is way too limiting and too expensive. Master Alchemist. Earthrite, put a Conjure Guardian into your hand. This is the same problem. It's too expensive, and it's not flexible enough. 6 mana 5/6 to get a single 3/3 token, when you could just play Ancient Alchemist, which is a 2/4 that evolves to 4/6, which is good enough in the vast majority of cases, and you get 3 tokens. Gem Golem. Gem Golem has Ward and Earthright, gain resistance to targeted enemy spells and effects. This card can be useful against Runecraft. The fact that it cannot be targeted with spells, so you cannot petrify it or ping it to death. However, it is still susceptible to random effects, such as Fire Chain and Professor of the Taboos against Earthright, and against other archetypes. This card comes out on turn 6. That's Themysci's Decree, and Themysci's Decree doesn't care. Necro Assassin and Lurching Corpse don't care either. This card has Ward, so Lurching Corpse counters this card. Overall, if you're running into a lot of Dimension Shift Runecraft, I guess, you could deck this card in. But it's not very good in the current state of the game. There's way too many random removal tools for the other crafts for it to be viable. Twin Guardians, summon 2 Guardian Golems, Earth Rite, give +1/+1 to all allied Guardian Golems. 7 mana for 2 3/3 tokens. 7 mana for 2 4/4 tokens. The 4/4 tokens is good, but this card costs a lot. 7 mana for 2 Guardian Golems is quite the hefty sum. And then that's it. Doesn't do anything else. So if you are playing the pure grind, you could run this card. Otherwise, I would just simply run Juno's Secret Laboratory, which gives you 4 total golems with an Earth Rite. They don't have the buff, but this is an amulet, and they have to constantly deal with the wards coming out unless they destroy this card. And Bella Mysteria. I messed with this card a little bit. She's okay. My main problem with this card is that it only gains +1/+1 on Evolve to deal 1 damage to all enemy followers. The only archetype that this is good against is Bloodcraft. Forestcraft tends to not leave their fairies on the board because they're recycling them for Roach combo. Greya, on the other hand, is very powerful with 4/4, can attack twice, you can clear the board. I ran this card to help with having a target for Pascal, but over time it was just wasted space. I could run something else, or just not have another target to worry about. So Annabella Mysteria is not worth it. Daria, Dimensional Witch. Now this one is a little bit controversial for more reasons than one. The main reason I'd say so is because you have very little spell boost in the deck, and she would most likely be played for around 6 mana, which 6 mana for a 5/5 and a hand refresh is still good. That's really all that you'd play her for, is a hand refresh, which might be good for Earth Rite. So my verdict on this card is, if you need a hand refresh, or rather you want more draw late game, you could go with this card, but the fact that this banishes means that you can't use this in Path to Purgatory. So just keep that in mind. I personally wouldn't run Daria in Earth Rite Rune, but the viability is there for just a simple hand refresh. And I skipped over this card. So Alchemist's Workshop, Fanfare, summon a Guardian Golem. This is a 4 cost to get a Sigil and a 3/3 ward token. If you have nothing to play on turn 4 besides this card, it's fine, because you could evolve it to a 5/5 and trade, and you have a Sigil for turn 5. I would run this card if, I guess, the meta wasn't so focused on spam, because Alchemist Workshop does well with single play cards that you play for tempo, but it's very weak against removal and just spamming cards. So it's a good card, just not right now. And that's really just Earth Rite's overview. The cards that were good: Dwarf Alchemist, Time War Mage Levy, even though he's not Earth Rite, the standard Sigils, which is Red Hot Ritual, and Teachings of Creation, Veteran Alchemist, Remy, Ancient Alchemist, Sunracle Pascal, Professor of the Taboos, Calamitous Curse, and Juno's Secret Laboratory for probably the staple cards, minus Pascal. Timeless Witch, Tech card, Veteran Alchemist, Tech card, my opinion, but against the current meta, very much required. Piercing Rune, viable card choice, and Iron Scrap Smelter for your 1-drop. And that's basically Earth Rite. So I went over the archetype. I hope that me going over the cards and how they all work together with each other and how good they are was informative for you. In part 2, we will be going over deck building and showing a replay of Earth Rite performing. So, I hope you enjoyed this content, and I will see you all next time.